Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the another and last episode of Tech Talks with Santosh for year 2020. And today we are going to discuss about Angular. And I kept this topic really basic, so new people who wants to actually learn Angular can actually benefit from this particular show. And we have a really special guest from a beautiful city, Athens, Greece. So welcome, Aris, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Santos. It is a great pleasure to be in your show. I have seen many of your episodes, and I'm very happy to meet you now. And thanks very much for the invitation.
Thanks a lot for joining us. So, just to introduce what Aris does, so he's an front-end developer and he works at a company called Plex Earth, and mostly working with Angular technology. And he also contributes to Angular. I have seen many PRs from him, and he recently became a GDE for Angular. And congratulations for that, Aris. Great
Thanks.
job.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, and he's also an Angular instructor for Code Hub, so where he loves to teach Angular the developers and uh, students. And he also wrote a book called Learning Angular Third Edition for Pact. So we are going to also discuss about that book later on the session, and we will also have some code to share. So in case you want to buy that book, we will share some codes. You can actually get some discounts. And in case he is not doing anything in the open source community, he loves to actually write article about Angular, and he loves to play the game called Assassin's Creed. So yeah, that's about Aris. Thanks again, Aris, for joining.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm very happy, as I said, to be here. I have some discount codes to share with you, with all the people that watch our show today. So I would like to share my slide first,
Yeah,
which
sure.
contains the promotional code, so that they can buy it from Amazon.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let me share it. Okay. I hope you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Is it okay? All right. So I have written this book, which is called Learning Angular Third Edition, which we'll talk about later today. If you want to get a copy with a discount of 25% of the price, you can log into Amazon.com, search for the title, which is called Learning Angular Third Edition, click on the button Buy Now, and enter this promotional code. With this code, you will get 25% of the initial price. And also, I would like this is for Amazon.com only. Also, Pact has created a campaign and sells this book, the ebook format of the book, in their website with $5 until next month, but only the electronic format.
Okay, that's great. So in case you want to buy this book, so I think in India we cannot use Amazon.com, but if you're from India, I think you can use the ebook format that will be available. So $5, I think that's pretty
Or you can go
good.
to the Amazon.in. I think it's in Amazon.in. It's the
Yeah,
same.
Amazon did. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it will work there as well. Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Iris. So let's start. Let's start with the Angular topic, and we have seen this. I think Angular framework has a really good growth this year in 2019, as per the GitHub data. So a lot of developers started learning Angular, and I think this is where we will keep it. So let's talk about why Angular, right? So why should one should actually choose Angular as a framework, and what are the advantages? So can you just let us know about that?
Yeah, so if you want to create, for example, an enterprise application where you will need many things, many libraries to connect together, it is better to choose a framework like Angular than a library, for example, React. Okay. So if you want to go quickly and develop quickly your product and maybe create a prototype or even an enterprise application, I think Angular is a better choice than a library. Now, there are some cases that Angular it doesn't. It's not the best. It's not the best fit for a type of application. But as front-end developers, we should always take into account what type of application we want to build. Do we want to build something quickly? Yes, we can go for Angular. Do we want to build an enterprise one? We can go for Angular.
Okay.
Because it has all the libraries together. For example, if you want to use forms, there is built-in framework. If you want to use HTTP, it is built in the framework in relation to other, libraries or frameworks that you need to install them separately.
Okay.
Also, they follow the semantic version.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, good, Aris. Sorry.
Also, they follow the Angular team follows the semantic versioning release, so we can be sure that in a release cycle of 6 months, we will have a new version packed with new features and bug fixes.
Yeah, that's cool. If I have to, let's say, compare, not actually compare, but let's say if I have to give some points where actually Angular really shines, right? So of course, all the frameworks, if you go to React, I can do the same thing with all the frameworks. So if you have to actually mention one feature, I would say where actually Angular really shines, what will be that one?
I think it is that it is cross-platform. Okay, it can run on mobile, on a server with server-side rendering and universal, or even on a web worker. I think it's a web worker, and also that its speed. It is the speed of the framework is very quick. It's very quick. It's a very quick framework. But I would like to say at this point that as someday I had a discussion with John Papa, and she was saying that it doesn't matter which one framework you will choose. Choose the framework that makes you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Cool. So actually the Angular team dropped the support for web worker, running it on web worker long, I think in Angular 9. So they tried everything, but it was not possible due to some issues. So they had to actually finally drop it. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So whenever we start learning Angular, we of course start with components. So if you have to actually define components to our new learner, right? So who are actually choosing Angular, so how you will define a component?
I think component is the basic building block in an Angular application. Many people are confused that the module is the basic building block, but this is not the case. Modules are used to group many components and with similar functionality together. But the main building block is a component. The component is actually a portion of our page, a view. For example, a list of products, or a cart form when you go to buy some products. So your Angular application consists of many components, and each component groups under a module.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So, which is related to directives. So, many developers, right? So, if someone actually is coming from React or who they are not aware of this concept called directives, I think this is really something different in Angular. So, can you just let us know what directives are and why to use it?
Directives are used on other components or HTML elements. We have two types of directives in the Angular framework. The first one is the attribute directive, which modifies the attribute. Which modifies the
structural directive.
The structural directive, yes, that modifies the structure of the DOM, either adds or removes content in the DOM. And the attribute directive, I don't remember if it is called attribute, the other type of directives.
Yeah, it's attribute, and the other one is.
Yeah. So the other directive, the attribute directives, modify the presentation of the HTML element on which they're applied. So we have these two types. Some of the most known built-in Angular directives are structural, are the ng4 and the ngif. ng4 is used when we want want to loop, to
Right.
create a loop inside our HTML template, and the ngIf is used to hide or show a portion of our HTML template. But it doesn't
Right.
actually hide or show, it removes or adds specified element on the HTML template.
Okay. And any example of attribute based directive?
Uh, Attributes, can't think of any right now.
Okay. Cool.
Don't know.
I think
Attribute
ng
direct.
class is one, right? Ng class, where you can add, remove classes.
Yes, that's
So
right. Yes, yes.
ng
NC class.
class.
Yeah, NC class.
Yeah, right.
But you can
So
also create your own custom directives. But
yeah, you can. Yeah.
for example, if you want to create, let's say that you want to create a directive, sorry, that you want to remove or add a portion of the HTML element according to the role of a user. So you can create your custom structural directive that interacts with the DOM and displays or removes the specified HTML element according to the role of a user that, for example, you have fetched from your server. Or if you want to create, for example, many websites have on their footer, they have a copyright, which is displays the current year. You could, for example, create a custom attribute directive and apply it on your footer or the footer of the application and in each part of your application.
Okay. Cool. So we have some questions related to, let's. I think there is one from Pulkit, so let's take it. I think it's beginner. So actually, I'm a beginner in JavaScript. So is it possible to directly get into Angular, or JavaScript is necessary to get into Angular?
You have to know. You have to have some basic knowledge of JavaScript. Angular is written in TypeScript, though, so you have to learn some TypeScript. JavaScript will not be. I mean, you will not use so much JavaScript in an Angular application. You will use TypeScript more. So if you have some basic knowledge of JavaScript, it will help you to understand TypeScript, and TypeScript will help you write Angular.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So our next question is related to another, I think, unique feature which is not available in other frameworks. So services, right? So what is actually different in Angular services, and what's different in, I mean, how to write a service basically.
Right. So components that we talked before are responsible for the presentational logic of your application. For example, you are creating a bug tracking system, okay, and you need to have priorities on each bug. So you have high, low priority. Now in your interface, in your server, they are saved as numbers 0, 1. But in your interface, you want to show them as strings, high, low. So this is presentational logic. It is not business. It is not business logic of your application. So this presentational logic should be written in the component. Now, when you want to create business logic for your application, components should delegate these business logic tasks into services. For example, you want to interact with the local storage of your browser. It is not best practice to go and interact with the local storage inside your component. You need to create a service that wraps over the local storage and use that service in your component. Now, the Angular CLI gives you a pretty decent type of commands that you can use, and especially for service, you can use the generate command, which will create your service out of the box. And then you can, when it creates your service, you can then add your own methods. Another example of service is when you want to interact with an HTTP, with an REST API. You shouldn't go inside your component and interact with the HTTP, because your manager may tell you after some months, okay, Aristeidis, we want to change the HTTP with WebSockets. So what should you do? What could you do? You should go through all the components and change the code. Now, this is anti-pattern. what it is suggested to do is to create a service that
Mm-hmm.
will run either the HTTP or the WebSocket, and you will change it only once inside your service.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, yeah,
So again, so when new developers start with services, right? So of course, in case they have a little bit idea about classes, they can actually grab the class-based services. But Angular also has something known as injection tokens. So what do you think where they are helpful, and how you will actually introduce this to a new guy who is actually new to the Angular?
actually, it's a very difficult definition. Okay, it's a very difficult topic.
Yeah.
Everybody, all when you start to talk to beginners in Angular about dependency injection, they are looking like, what does it say? What is he talking about?
Yeah.
Um, so the best approach is to explain it with diagrams. I have created
Mm-hmm.
a real diagram inside my book that explains
Mm-hmm.
to a beginner how
Mm-hmm.
the dependency injection mechanism works in Angular.
Mm-hmm.
Injection tokens that you mentioned are very helpful when you want to create some sort of application settings. For example, you want to keep, you have an API URL, an API URL,
Mm-hmm.
the version of your application, or some other setting. So you can
Mm-hmm.
create an injection token with this format and inject it into your components. Now, when we say inject into components, we mean we go to the constructor of the component
Mm-hmm.
class and write
Mm-hmm.
and define a private variable with the type of the injected dependency. Now,
Mm-hmm.
personally, I prefer environment files for such things, but injection token is a good alternative.
Okay. Cool. So let's take a question. I think Nurali has this question. I feel I'm not using the strength of directive as the idea to create one does not come to me intuitively. What are the signs which says that this functional requirement can be made into directive? I think it's a good question. I mean, of course, once we write the code, we don't. It doesn't actually click that we need to actually write a directive here. So how you will actually present it? Okay, this is where I have to write a directive probably.
Right. So there are many jQuery plugins that interact with the DOM. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For example, there is a library that I recently used, which is called Code Mirror. It is actually a
Mm-hmm.
code editor.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so when you want to use this jQuery plugin,
Mm-hmm.
should you if you can't avoid using jQuery at all, you should create a
Mm-hmm.
directive. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you will create a directive and you will define it on a div, and when you define it, automatically this jQuery plugin will do its magic and create the code mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So I have seen many times that, which is, I feel is wrong. Sometimes developers use this inside their component, but this is not correct because if you have a jQuery plugin that modifies the DOM, for example, code mirror, or I can't remember, I don't think, I can't remember anything else. So if you have this type of directive of interaction with the DOM, you should create a directive, and you should
Mm-hmm.
not go inside your component and initialize a jQuery plugin.
Okay. So
I
wherever I
hope
actually,
it's
yeah.
clear.
So wherever we want to actually wrap some logic, which is doing a lot of DOM manipulation, I think creating directive is a good idea.
That's right, yeah.
So I think this is. Thanks for live. Could you share some software print screen done with Angular or Navigate if you have them in localhost? I'm not sure what
Sure, yeah,
this question.
if you want.
I mean, I'm not sure if he's asking for code. Probably you can explain your question in detail so we can look into that. Okay, again, some question on directive. So it's from Ahmed. If you want to extend the built-in directives, what kind of approach we should follow? Imagine we want to have power of ng4. Also, we want to extend the methods. So, yeah, any idea? Have you
Yeah,
ever
that's a
heard?
good question. I have
Mm-hmm.
never extended the built-in directive because it is
Uh-huh.
built-in, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will create one for sure. I will create one
Mm-hmm.
a custom one, for example. sometime I wanted to have uh, the logic of ngIf and
Mm-hmm.
remove and display or hide a portion of my HTML template according to a user role.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of using ngIf and using some service to get the roles, I created a structural directive
Mm-hmm.
that does all the work with the service to get the roles and interact with the view container. It's
Mm-hmm.
called. So
Okay.
in this situation, I would create my own, but I don't think you can extend.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say, Santos? I haven't seen any scenario like that to extend the
I,
building
I've
direct.
I've seen some people actually doing that. So extending the built-in directives, for example, ng4, and building their own directive on top of it, or many pipes, right? So this is very common with pipe, I think, where people do that. A lot of developers do that, but it's very rare to actually extend built-in directives, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. There isn't any interface that you can implement, for example.
Yeah,
To
yeah, but they
extend.
are classes, right? So if they are classes, they anyone can extend it.
Yeah.
That's the base. Yeah. So we will come back to this question last. So that's one of the question which we are going to discuss about what's new and exciting with Angular 9 Plus. And Lars as a shout out. So there are fans of Lars online, creator of MVP model. Yeah. Cool. So let's move on to the next question. So, which is related to HTTP calls. You mentioned during defining services, right? You also mentioned something called HTTP service call. So, how you can actually make an HTTP call from Angular and what it allows you to do. So,
Right. So first of all, you create a service, okay? Because we said before that we can't interact with HTTP directly from our component. So you create a service and you
hmm,
inject. Angular has a built-in HTTP client that you can use. It
okay.
is called HTTP client module, and you
Hmm,
can use the HTTP client service that
okay.
exports this module. So you inject this service into your service, and
Hmm,
it has methods. It has all the API methods like get, patch, post, put, delete, all this type of stuff. Now these methods return observables. They are not
ah,
promise-based or callbacks. They are
hmm,
observables. So in the component,
hmm,
you need to subscribe to the methods that you have created in your
hmm,
service and get the value.
okay. Hmm,
There is also that you can use also an HTTP interceptor, which is a
hmm,
particular type of HTTP service that
hmm,
sits between your application and the server and intercepts requests and responses. So if you want to send to your server an authentication token, you shouldn't go to each HTTP method and do it
hmm.
manually, but instead you should create your interceptor, and the interceptor will send the token along with the request.
That's really cool. So it means in Angular, I don't need to use fetch API probably, right?
No, but you could do it if you want. It's not forbidden. I have
Mm-hmm.
used it once, but the real difference between using a node is that if you use the fetch API, the interceptor
Mm-hmm.
will not detect the request
Okay. Mm-hmm.
because interceptor detects only requests that originate from the built-in HTTP client.
Okay.
So in a case that I have used it, I had a custom HTTP client, and I wanted to intercept it. So what did I do? I created wrapper methods over
Mm-hmm.
this custom HTTP client, and then I could intercept it using an interceptor.
Oh, that's okay. So probably okay. So let's see. Yeah. So actually, last mentioned you can actually extend Angular directives, but he's saying it has changed quite a bit in Ivy. So probably maybe Mehmet, you can connect with Lars and
Yeah,
yeah.
Ivy
So let's
was a
move.
big enabler. Was a big enabler in after version 9. I mean,
Yeah.
it did many things easier, and
Yeah. Yeah. So let's move on to our next question, and which is related to forms. So in case I have to actually create forms, how we can do it in Angular, and what are the modules which are available?
Right. So we have two types of forms that we can use in Angular, the
Mhm.
template-driven and the reactive forms. Now, the template-driven are easier to set up. Okay, they operate directly on the HTML template, and the reactive forms operate directly on the TypeScript class, so they are more scalable and more testable. Template-driven forms, I think, are better when you want to create, for example, a small form, just such as a login form or a search form. When you want to create something more advanced, you should go with reactive forms, and they are called reactive because they 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 are used they use a reactive pattern. Okay, the reactive reactive programming techniques. So but there is a case where template-driven forms are better than reactive forms for large forms, and this is when you want to create dynamic forms. I have seen that template-driven are more easier to handle in this scenario, but it is up to the developer what he will use at the end of the day.
Okay.
Reactive forms are far more testable and more capable. Also in the Angular.io, the official Angular documentation, uh, they have put the reactive forms as a first class citizen in the Angular world. Okay, so Angular promotes more reactive forms because of their ease of use and because they are more testable. But you can always use template-driven forms if you want, especially if you come from an Angular JS background, as I come, as in my case, where we didn't have reactive forms there.
Right. Cool. So which one you prefer it is? So I have seen this. This is a like very I would say this is always comes whenever I talk about forms. They will say, okay, which one to use, reactive or template? Which one you prefer?
Again, I don't prefer one or the other. It depends on the case. For
Okay.
example, we had a new developer in my team, and he asked me which form should I use for this scenario. I told him how the template driven forms, what are the benefits, okay, and the disadvantages of one and another, and that he could choose accordingly. So there is no golden rule in this case for me. For me, and I think that a beginner in Angular should do the same thing. They should go directly for reactive forms. They should check out if template driven forms make their job better. They have the same capabilities almost, but the reactive forms is more reactive. For example, the form and the controls of the form have some observables that you can subscribe and get the status when the status changes of a control or when the value changes of a control. So if you are a fan of reactive programming, I think reactive forms will be easier to understand.
Yeah. Cool. So Nurali has this question that validating with template driven is pain. Do you think
Yes.
so? Okay.
Actually, you need to put more HTML attributes to do validation. Again, if there is a small form, it's okay. You can do the validation. But a big advantage of the template-driven forms is that there's no point to test the HTML. For example, if you template-driven forms put the validation only on the HTML template, so there's no point to unit test your HTML template. But in reactive forms, where the model is inside the TypeScript class, there is a point. You should unit test it.
Yeah, I think that's one area where actually reactive form shines. I think you can actually unit test most of the logics which you have written, including your validations. Uh, Okay, so let's take another question before we move ahead. What should be the approach to develop mobile application using Angular? I have seen you actually do desktop application using Angular, but have you got the chance to explore this area?
Um, okay, if I wanted to, generally, if I wanted to develop a mobile application, I would avoid using a web framework. I would create it with a native Android or iOS.
Okay.
But if you don't have any other choice and you must use a web framework, for example, Angular, first I would go with native script, which
Mm-hmm.
compiles your Angular application into a native bundle, for example, one
Mm-hmm.
for the Android and one for iOS. Or I would use Ionic, which does not compile, which does not output a native application, but instead it renders it inside the web view on your device.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it feels less native.
Okay. Cool. So yes, Virat. So you can probably explore these two options. And I think again a question related to forms. How do we strong type reactive forms, not having type intelligence while displaying form values feels error prone? Of course, this is one of the major concern everyone has.
Yeah. The Angular team has started from
Yeah.
Angular from version 10 or 9,
Mm-hmm.
9 or 10, I don't remember, I think 10. They have
Done.
started to add strong typing in reactive forms. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the cases that I saw is that if you use the form builder service to create
Mm-hmm.
your reactive form, and especially the group method, now this group method, its second parameter, which contains the validators, before Angular 10, it had a type any. Now it has a specific type, which is called abstract control options, I think. So we see that you can see that the Angular team has started to converting it to give a more type safety reactive form. There are some libraries though that gives, if you install them and use it in your applications, they give
Mm-hmm.
you strong typing inside reactive forms, but with their own way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So this is something I think they made some improvement in Angular 10 as well as 11. So really, probably you can actually wait. I'm not sure when it will be completed. Probably let's hope by Angular 12 you get API which is fully type safe, but we cannot guarantee right now because it's in roadmap. We have seen that.
I think it was one of the most voted features
Issues. Yeah, yeah.
in
One
their
of the most.
GitHub repository. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So Valley says he'll be waiting for it. So okay, so let's come on to the last question probably for the day. In case you have any more question to ask, you can send it in chat. So let's come back to the features. So let's go back in time and let's start from Angular 9, right? So what are the because Angular 9 was where there it was a big release. Ivy came in and after that uh, actually we thought most of the issues will be resolved, which is kind of not right. So what do you think, which is your favorite feature from Angular 9 onwards, and what do you think is one thing which is missing and one thing which is really excellent?
Okay, I had the same problem with Angular 9. I want to tell a story. I was writing my book at that time, and I was asking some Angular team members, when will you release Angular 9? Because I want to publish my book with Angular 9. But there was a big delay because of Ivy, and
Yeah.
it was also December, and they had Christmas in the
Yeah.
between. So they delayed until February, and I finally published it with Angular 10, but it's okay. One of the features that really liked me uh, was the component test harness. I'm a big fan of unit testing. I'm using unit testing and in the TypeScript class and the HTML element and the HTML template. So most of the time during development, I write unit tests. I'm not writing features. So when they released the component test harness, it was very. I was really excited because there was no point to relying on their class names to query a specific material component, Angular material component. They had this notion of the page object, just as Protocol has, and they expose a specific API that you can use in your tests.
Okay.
What is still missing from the Angular framework, and I think Lars will agree with me, because I have read some of his articles about that, is optional ng modules.
Okay.
So I think that they should become optional because it is a component. The central point in the Angular is the component, not the module.
Okay.
It will be
I
great.
mean,
Because it will enable you to. It will open new horizons if you have optional modules, because you will be able to make lazy loading and stuff like that more easily than now.
cool. I mean, this is one thing which I support. Basically, I don't want the Angular modules to go away because maybe everyone has their own preference. I spoke to Lars as well that no, I don't want it to go. So cool. And what do you think?
You know,
And yeah,
if they remove it completely, there will be many problems with breaking changes from one
yeah,
version to the
I agree.
other. So it is also very difficult to write a migration for that, I think.
I mean, yeah, agreed. So migration will be like really difficult. But I think more than that, I think if I remove Angular modules, right, I think my code will become lot unstructured, I would say. So this is where I like Angular modules, that my code is structured. I know which area to actually choose from, and where to write my code, where to add. I mean, how to club my features together, right? So this is because before I was a .NET developer, basically. So probably that's the thing why I like Angular modules, because you have something known as namespaces, right? So in case you code in .NET or Java, you use a lot of namespaces, and I could easily relate these namespaces to Angular modules, and I was like, okay, this is really good. But yes, everyone has their own choices. So good. So recently we got Angular 11. What do you think? What was new in Angular 11, and what is the one feature which you loved?
Oh, the component test harness that I mentioned was in Angular 11.
Oh, okay,
This is,
okay,
yeah. I thought that you asked me about Angular 9 plus, and
yeah.
I
Okay,
went
so you
directly
mentioned
to
Angular
11.
11.
Sorry, I
Oh,
went
okay, cool.
directly to 11. Uh,
Okay.
you know, for 9, I don't remember a specific feature that I had, that I liked most. But in 11, except of the component test harness, I liked also the approach that they are trying to move from TS-Link to ES-Link. There will be a big, huge change. Also, the article that you have written in the Angular in depth, it was very insightful. You had packed all the changes in the Angular 11 in one place, so it helped me a lot. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you, thank you. So I think Angular TS-Lint to ES-Lint is not happening. It won't be native. So actually, Lars recently wrote about it, how you can migrate to something called Angular ES-Lint, which is maintained by another open source author. So he will be maintaining that, and probably Angular is going to give you command like ng deploy. So you have ng deploy command where you can just just actually put any or plug in any library or any provider like that. So Angular team is planning to do something like that. So you may have a command in future where you can choose any open source library which is available for linting, and then you can just plug in. That's the plan. They are not going to have it native, which is really bad, or I would say really sad, because I think I was expecting that to be native.
I just want to clear out some, some confusion that exists inside the developer community. They're not going to drop linked for existing applications. I
Yeah.
mean, they
Yeah.
will provide a migration approach to help you move from PS-linked to ES-linked, and this is what James Henry is working currently.
Yeah. Yes,
But
that's what, right?
for new projects, the nglit
Mm-hmm.
command will continue to work if
Yep.
you configure your own linked, the linter that you that you love most, that you
Mm-hmm.
like.
Yeah, exactly. So I think let's. Yeah. So Lars says I mean, he wants to say goodbye to Angular modules, protector, and karma.
They are doing
And
some. They are preparing also some work with Protractor.
uh-huh.
I think that they will revive the whole thing. They have
Yeah.
created
So
an internal team that
uh-huh. Okay.
is working towards this.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so he says you don't have to group, you don't have to use Angular modules. Okay, cool. So let's take one more question and then we'll wrap up. So Gururaj has this question: purpose of optional and skip self. Any
Right.
practical example?
Yeah, I have used this one in a case that I had created a component, which and that component was a form control. It was like a form control. Okay, so I could put this component inside the form group or inside a form array.
Okay.
So in the constructor of this component, I should define the form group injectable and the form array injectable as optional because it could be used either in one case or the other. So the
Okay.
optional gives you defines that the service that you define as optional may be or may be not there when you use it.
Okay.
The
And
skip
what?
self, the skip self, I know what I remember what it means, but it is not very difficult to explain it. I don't have any easy case to
Yeah. Okay.
explain to you. What do
Cool.
you think about the
So
skip?
So if I have to define skip self, it's like just removing myself from the entire this injection tree, right? So you have injection tree whenever you work with Angular, and let's say if a component which is actually not providing the service to its own. So for example, a component having providers property, that's what I will say, a component which is providing a service to its own. If they are not doing it, I can mark it as skip self. So it actually checks if this particular service is available with parent. So whoever the immediate parent is, it can be a component or it can be a module. So if
Yeah.
you have that kind of scenario, I think skip self. I generally use it in case I know that this particular service is not available with this component. Maybe I mean, in case Lars, if you have any idea about skip self, you can just chip in. We are struggling here. Lars, save us.
Come on, say it.
Okay. So yeah, that's it. I think we are done with the questions, and the next question is related to the book. So this book is on Angular 10, right? So you
Yes, it is this book, this one.
mhm,
It
Angular
is
learning.
the examples that contains
Mhm,
are written in Angular 10, but
mhm,
Angular is backwards compatible in some versions.
mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think that for 11, 12, it will be okay. You will not have any problems, any breaking changes.
Okay.
Uh, Now, this book is destined for beginners, and
Okay.
the real benefit of this is that it goes you through creating a new application from scratch using the CLI,
Mhm.
creating forms, HTTP directives,
Okay.
learns you how to deploy to a hosting provider. So it helps you from scratch to deployment. And
Oh.
the good one is that it has the last chapter contains a real working
Mhm.
Angular applications that you can work.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, so it's more focused on the beginners who wants to actually start learning Angular.
Yes, or for example, backend developers that want to get started with web development and especially Angular. It has
Mhm.
a chapter also for TypeScript, an introductory
Okay.
though. And
Okay.
yeah,
Cool. So, yep, thanks for answering that, Aris. So, next question is something you want to promote. I mean, apart from your book, so in case you have anything else to share, you want to give a shout out, anything you can.
Yeah, I would like to share with you a tool, a Visual Studio Code extension that
Mhm.
I have recently found, which is called Angular Evergreen,
Okay.
and it notifies you when there is a new version of Angular available, Angular and Angular
Hmm.
CLI, and it gives you an
Okay.
interface where you
Uh-huh.
can update directly your project. Because
Okay.
we're Angular developers, we may not have time to check every
Hmm.
day if there is a new release of the framework. So this
Hmm.
one will give you a notification and it will guide you how to update. This extension has been created by an Angular GDE, which is called Doguhan. Doguhan.
Duhan, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember his surname. Sorry about that, Doguhan. And recently I joined their team in the GitHub repository. So if you use it and you want something to ask or report an issue, you would
Hmm.
be very welcome.
Oh, that's really cool. So it's like it gives you alert for minor releases or just major releases.
It gives you for any release major, minor parts, and
Uh-huh.
also allows you to migrate directly to the next one, not the stable, the next.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay. I mean, experimental. You mean
yes,
experimental?
experimental. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
now we are currently in the process of supporting other Angular libraries. For example, if you use Angular Material, this
Mm-hmm.
extension, we would like to be able to read your package.json and detect that you are using Angular Material and check if there is an Angular Material version new, if there is any new release.
Okay, that's cool. I'll surely check it out, and I'll add this into our description so you can share the link with us, and then it will be available for everyone to see. And let's take. I think we are already done, but we'll take last two questions. Guru Raj has this question: any resources for creating complex custom form controls like dead picker, multi-select? Any what resources you will suggest?
Uh, I would suggest to check out the control value accessor.
Mm-hmm.
It is a class that allows you to create custom controls that can be used in reactive or template driven forms.
Mm-hmm.
And also the Angular material repository has the code has some examples, and you can check out how they implement the date
Mm-hmm.
pickers or the selects. But I think if you go, it will not be so simple in the Angular material repository. If you go with the
Agreed.
control value accessor, it would be great. Generally,
Mm-hmm.
I always say to beginners in Angular that they should check out first Angular.io, except
Mm-hmm.
of course directly to Stack Overflow or other websites, because Angular.io has a vast uh, amount of resources for a beginner in Angular.
Cool. Okay, let's take this as the last question. Any thoughts on what question one should prepare for Angular? I mean, it's more of interview preparation, I think.
Yeah, if you watch this episode, I think you will be ready to write some Angular. Yeah.
I mean, probably Virat, you can actually ping me on maybe Twitter, or you can ping Riz, and we will be able to answer that.
The best approach for me is to create a proof of concept application that you would
Mm-hmm.
like. For example, I have created an Angular and Angular Material application in my GitHub profile that interacts with the Marvel API. So
Okay.
if you do something related,
Mm-hmm.
something that you would like, for example, movies or I don't know, the weather, and you have
Mm-hmm.
it in your GitHub portfolio, then this would be
Yeah.
the best, the better.
Yep. So I think create some apps. I think it will give you more idea about the internals and what can be used. So I think that's the best thing to do. And Lars, thank for also putting so much. Always there, Lars. I mean, Lars has been our first guest for year 2020, and this is our last stream for 2020, and is still there. So thanks a lot, Lars, for all the support you gave. And yep, this is it. So anything else you want to say, Lars? Sorry, Aris. before you
Yeah,
wrap up?
I would like to say that you're doing an amazing job with the community, and this talk and the previous one with NGRX and the book that the guest presented, it is a
Mhm.
good idea because now we have Christmas, and it is a good, it is now it is the best time to buy a book, for example, to read
Mhm.
in the Christmas holidays.
Yep, agreed. Cool. Thanks a lot. So Ankur has a question. What is the best ways to get all the decorators? I think they are they are actually documented on Angular.io. You can probably go to the Angular.io and go to the API section. They all the decorators are actually documented there. Cool. So, thanks a lot, everyone. I mean, the 2020 was, of course, not a good year for most of us. We couldn't travel anywhere, and we couldn't meet each other. But yep, we will remember 2020 for as a really bad year. But let's hope 2021 will be better, and it brings a lot of happiness to everyone's life and your loved ones as well. So we will meet again in 2020. We'll be probably doing our first live stream on 8th January with another guest, Anuradha, who will be she will be sharing about and talking about accessibility. So I really wanted to explore the accessibility. A lot of developers don't give much value to the accessibility, and there are a lot of developers on Twitter who are talking about accessibility. It should be a mandatory thing, and Anuradha has been talking a lot about accessibility over the years. So we'll hear from her how we can improve and how we can share more knowledge about accessibility. So that's what we'll do in 2021. But as of now, have a great holidays. Enjoy your holidays with your loved ones and be safe. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.